Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I always imagined my graduation day would be one of those rare moments when everything clicked. You know the kind. They play them in movies, all slow motion and golden light. Parents crying, siblings waving, someone holding up a handmade sign that says you did it, like I just won the Super Bowl or something. I didn't need much, just a face in the crowd. One person clapping for me like I mattered. But when my name echoed through the auditorium, bouncing off the cold metal bleachers, the only sound that followed was polite, scattered applause. I walked across that stage like I was invisible. Because I was. There was a whole row reserved with my last name on it. Green Family of Graduate. I'd even double-checked it the day before. 6 seats, center aisle. But those seats stayed empty. As the other graduates took their selfies with sobbing moms and proud dads, I just kept glancing back, hoping maybe traffic was bad. Maybe they were running late. Maybe this wasn't the punchline to a joke I'd been the setup for since I was 10 years old. It wasn't traffic. It wasn't an emergency. It wasn't even forgetfulness. It was Chloe, again. My little sister, Chloe Green, 18 years old, 5'10", full ride to nowhere, but with a face that could land her on the cover of Vogue if the wind hit her just right. She'd booked a last-minute photo shoot with some up-and-coming photographer from LA, and apparently my entire family decided that was more important than the culmination of 4 years of 18-credit semesters, late-night shifts at the diner, and student loans the size of a small mortgage. I didn't cry, not right away. I just smiled the kind of smile that hurts your teeth, took my diploma folder with shaky hands, and stepped off stage as fast as I could without falling over in those stupid heels. In the dressing room, I sat in a folding chair, staring down at the navy robe that made my skin itch, the tassel swaying back and forth in front of my eyes like some kind of cruel metronome. I checked my phone, hoping for a text, a call, a missed notification. Maybe they were stuck in the parking lot and feeling awful about it. Maybe they were racing over now. Instead, I saw it. A post from my mom on Facebook, already 2 hours old. Proud of our beautiful Chloe today. Big things coming. The caption sat under a perfectly filtered photo of Chloe in a backless dress, leaning against a concrete wall while my dad, mom, and even my Uncle Ray stood behind her smiling like she just got engaged. My grandmother was there too. I zoomed in to make sure. Yep, that was her cane. I stared at that photo for a long time. Like if I looked hard enough, I'd spot some detail that would explain all of this. Maybe a hint that they'd swing by later, or that this was all just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. That's when it hit me. Not like a slap, more like a slow boiling wave rising up behind my ribs. The kind of realization you don't want to admit, because it's just too pathetic. They never really planned to come. Somewhere between Chloe's headshots and my diploma, they'd made a choice, and it wasn't me. I was still sitting there, robe half off, hair coming undone, when my phone buzzed again. A message from Dad, the one man who always hovered somewhere between there but not really and emotionally distant but financially present. He never missed a bill but hadn't hugged me since I was 14. I almost didn't open it. I thought it'd be something like, hope graduation went well or sorry we got tied up. But no, it was just 5 words. We need to talk, urgently. No punctuation, no love, Dad. Just cold, stiff panic. And just like that, everything shifted. Because if he was saying it was urgent, it had to be serious. This man didn't do emotion. Hell, he barely did eye contact. The last time he called something urgent was when the water heater exploded and flooded the basement. So why now, why today, of all days, did he decide to break the family silence? I stared at the screen, thumbs hovering over the keyboard, heart pounding louder than the applause I never got. I could still hear the other graduates laughing outside, taking photos in the sun with people who actually showed up for them. My ears burned, my stomach twisted. Was it about Chloe? About the shoot? Was someone hurt? Or was this just another insult in disguise? I couldn't decide if I wanted to scream or sob or laugh in his face. Instead, I just typed 2 words. About what? I didn't expect an answer right away. but the bubbles popped up almost instantly. He was typing. Then it stopped. No message, just silence. And in that moment, I realized something else, something worse. Maybe this wasn't even about me. Maybe once again, I was just a bystander in a story written for someone else. But something in his voice, because I could hear his tone even in those 5 flat words, told me that whatever he wanted to say wasn't going to be small, and I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. Let me ask you something, and be honest. If your entire family skipped the biggest day of your life to go watch your sibling pose for a camera, and then your dad texted you out of nowhere saying, "We need to talk, urgently," would you pick up that call? Because I did. And I still don't know if that was the biggest mistake of my life, or the moment everything finally made sense. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. I lay on top of the covers in my graduation dress, still zipped halfway up, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly in circles above me, like it was mocking the way everything in my life just kept revolving around Chloe. I kept replaying the day in my mind. The silence in the auditorium, the empty row with our last name on it, the hollowness of walking across the stage like a ghost. And no matter how I turned it, stretched it, or tried to justify it, the truth was clear. They didn't forget, and they weren't late. They simply chose not to come. They looked at the calendar, saw that both daughters had something big on the same day, and chose her, again, like always. And what really got under my skin, what made my jaw lock and my fist clench in the dark, was how unsurprised I was. I'd love to say this was a first, that it was some shocking, out-of-character betrayal that flipped my world upside down. But if I'm being honest, it was just the final chapter in a very old book I'd been forced to read cover to cover since childhood. The truth is, Chloe's been the main character in our family for as long as I can remember. Ever since she was old enough to form full sentences, she had the uncanny ability to pull everyone into her orbit with that syrupy voice, those wide eyes, and that natural instinct for knowing exactly when to smile, when to cry, and when to play dumb to get out of trouble. I used to think she was magic. Now I think she's just a master manipulator who figured out early on that people love beauty more than honesty and charm more than effort. When I was 10 and Chloe was 6, I had a birthday party at the bowling alley. I invited 10 kids. I was so excited. But an hour into it, Chloe tripped and scraped her knee on the pavement outside. Not bad, barely a scratch. But she cried, of course, loud and dramatic, and my mom immediately decided that the party had to end early. "We'll do a cake at home," she said, already packing the goodie bags. The other parents didn't even question it. We left the alley with my half-eaten cake in a styrofoam box and a sister whimpering in the back seat. That was the first time I remember realizing that Chloe's pain, no matter how small, always carried more weight than my joy. By the time I hit high school, I'd stopped fighting for attention altogether. What was the point? I got straight A's, had a part-time job, didn't drink or sneak out. But it was Chloe who got the spotlight for making it onto the cheer team, even though she got benched half the season for missing practice. When I got accepted into college, there was a nice dinner. A family photo, one of those stiff ones where Dad stood behind us with his hand on my shoulder like a stranger. But when Chloe signed with that modeling agency 6 months later, Mom booked a private dinner at a rooftop restaurant and toasted her like she'd cured cancer. They all posted the photo of that night. Not one person posted anything from mine. So no, I wasn't shocked when they missed my graduation. I was hurt. I was humiliated. But I wasn't surprised. I was used to swallowing that bitter little pill and pretending it didn't taste like betrayal. But the text from Dad, that 5-word warning shot, kept rattling around in my head like a loose screw in a machine I didn't know was broken until now. I hadn't responded after the first message. I asked, "About what?" And he started typing, then stopped. No message ever came. That silence had weight to it, like it wasn't just hesitation. It was fear. Around 4 in the morning, When the light started to bleed through the blinds and everything took on that strange early morning gray, I got up, made coffee, and sent him another text. "Let's talk. Today." He answered right away. Said to meet him at the old diner on Maple, the one with the peeling green booths and the jukebox that only plays Springsteen and Dolly Parton. He said he'd be there at 9. When I walked in, the place was almost empty, except for a man sitting in the corner with 2 cups of coffee, already on the table. He looked older than I remembered, like someone had fast-forwarded the last 6 months and added 10 years to his face. He was hunched, pale, fingers wrapped too tight around the mug, like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. That was when I realized this wasn't just guilt. This wasn't about the graduation. It wasn't even about Chloe's photo shoot. Whatever this was, it was deeper. I slid into the booth across from him. "You said you needed to talk." He looked at me for a long time. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a letter. Old, yellowed at the edges. Folded so many times the creases had started to crack. He pushed it across the table without a word. I didn't pick it up right away. "Your grandfather left that," he said finally. His voice was dry. "I found it in his storage unit 2 weeks ago, was going to burn it, should have. But I couldn't, not after yesterday." I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Grandpa Joe's cursive, tight and slanted. He'd passed 5 years ago, but his voice came alive on the page. And what he said felt like a punch straight to the chest. Chloe wasn't my dad's daughter. I blinked, read it again. She wasn't his daughter. My mom had an affair. Not just a fling, an actual affair with his best friend. And Chloe was the result. The letter explained everything. My dad had known for years, so had my grandmother, even Uncle Ray, everyone except me. I looked up, unable to breathe. Why didn't anyone tell me? My dad's eyes looked glassy, like he'd been trying not to cry all morning. Because it didn't matter to them. She was still part of the family, and because your mother begged me not to. Said it would destroy everything, but I think it was already broken, and you deserve to know. I didn't say a word, I just stared at the letter. My hands were shaking. Then he said something I'll never forget. "We gave her everything, trying to make up for what we did. And in the process, we gave you nothing." That was when something in me cracked. Not loudly, not visibly. Just a quiet snap, like a string inside had been pulled too tight for too long. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just nodded. And inside I started planning. Not to destroy them, not out of spite, but because I realized something that morning. If the truth was a weapon, then I had just been handed a loaded gun, and I was the only one brave enough to pull the trigger. I left the diner with that letter burning a hole in my purse, and for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't sadness or resentment. It was power, not joy, not revenge yet, just the raw, steady hum of finally holding something undeniable in my hands. The truth wasn't a whisper anymore. It was real on paper, written in my grandfather's own hand, and it stared up at me like a challenge I hadn't been prepared for, but couldn't walk away from now that it was mine. The sun was high when I stepped outside, blinding, almost theatrical, like the world thought it was doing me a favor by giving me a beautiful day to match the weight of what I'd just learned. But all I could see was Chloe's face in my mind, her perfect little pout, the way she always knew how to tilt her head just enough to make everyone soften. I pictured her holding court during that photo shoot, while the rest of them stood around fawning over her, feeding her strawberries or whatever the hell models eat between camera flashes, completely unaware that the very foundation of the story they'd built their family on had just shattered. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel and reading the letter over and over again, like I thought maybe there was something else hidden between the lines. But it was all there, plain and deliberate. My mother's affair had lasted nearly 2 years. It began when Chloe was still a toddler. Her real father had been my dad's best friend since college, a man named Patrick Dyer. He'd been over at our house so often when we were kids that I used to think he was just another uncle. I remember how Chloe used to run to him the moment he walked in the door, laughing and climbing up into his lap like they were magnetized. And I remember how my dad would always find something to do in another room when Patrick came around. My grandfather had found out before anyone else. There was a note in the letter about how he'd confronted my mother, how she'd begged him not to tell, swore it was over, swore Patrick was out of the picture. But then he wrote something that chilled me. The child isn't Michael's. I did the math, and I saw how she looked at him. She knew, and I think he knows too. So Maida knew for years, and yet he stayed. He stayed and raised Chloe as his own, but not out of some grand sense of forgiveness or decency. No, what he did instead was punish me. Not overtly. He never hit me, never yelled. But he disappeared emotionally. Left me to float through the house like an afterthought, while all his energy was poured into maintaining the image of a normal family and propping up the lie they'd all chosen to live in. He knew I was his, knew I was the one he could rely on, and still he picked her, over and over. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, trying to decide what to do with the letter. Burn it, copy it, send it to every contact in my phone, and let the chaos unfold without lifting another finger. The temptation was almost overwhelming. But I didn't want a tantrum. I didn't want a screaming match or some teary confrontation. I wanted precision. I wanted clarity. And most of all, I wanted control. So I did something I'd never done before. I messaged Hannah Reed. Back in junior year, Hannah had been the girl who ran the school podcast. She used to carry a recorder with her everywhere and interviewed students between classes, piecing together audio stories about cafeteria food controversies and teacher gossip like she was born for NPR. I always liked her. Quiet, kind, smart in a way that made people underestimate her. Last I heard, she was working for a local news site in town, covering human interest pieces and small-town scandals. I pulled up her profile and sent a simple message. Hey, I've got a story. Family secret. Old money. Betrayal. It's real. You'll want this. She answered within 10 minutes. We set a time to meet the next day. When I arrived at her office, more like a converted attic above a bookstore, I brought everything. The letter, photos of Patrick with Chloe when we were kids, copies of my birth certificate and hers, even the Facebook post from the day of the graduation showing the whole damn family standing behind Chloe, like she was a prize thoroughbred. I laid it all out calmly, fact by fact, like I was giving a presentation. Hannah listened the whole time without interrupting. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled hard, like she'd just come up for air. Do you want this to go public? She asked. I nodded once. Not with names, not yet. Use a pseudonym, call it fiction if you have to. But it's real, and it deserves to be heard, she agreed. 2 days later, the piece dropped. She titled it The Invisible Daughter, and it spread like fire in dry grass. The comment section exploded. Everyone in our town read it. Everyone in our extended family read it. The guesses started immediately, people speculating who it could be, who the beautiful golden child was, who the father might be, piecing together clues like it was a true crime mystery. My family didn't know I was behind it, at least not at first, but they felt it, hard. My aunt called my mother in tears. My grandmother deleted her Facebook. And Chloe, she lost a modeling contract 2 hours after the story went live. The agency didn't want to be associated with unresolved familial controversies. Their words, not mine. I didn't feel triumphant, not exactly. What I felt was colder, sharper, like I'd finally returned a slap that had been echoing across the years since childhood. I didn't want them to hurt. I wanted them to see, to understand what they'd done, to be unable to look at Chloe without remembering how they built her pedestal on my silence. That night, as I sat in my apartment, watching the story's reach grow bigger by the hour, my phone rang. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She called again. Still, I let it ring. Then she showed up at my door. When I opened it, she stood there like a statue, pale, trembling, lips pressed into a tight line that told me she wasn't here to apologize. "You don't understand what you've started," she said, her voice low and frantic, almost like she was afraid someone might be listening from behind the trees. I stared at her, arms crossed. "I started telling the truth," I said, but she shook her head, eyes wide now, not angry but scared. "You think it ends with us, with Chloe? You have no idea who you're dealing with." I didn't ask what she meant, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just about a broken family anymore. This was something older, something uglier, and I had just lit the match. The morning after my mother showed up on my doorstep, looking like she'd seen a ghost, or worse, remembered one, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold, and my laptop open to the article's comment section, reading the chaos I had unleashed. The story had picked up traction overnight, shared across forums and Facebook groups, spreading like the kind of wildfire you don't notice until it's at your front door. People weren't just intrigued, they were dissecting, analyzing, hungry for more, and some of them were starting to put pieces together. A few commenters mentioned details that hit a little too close to home. A particular dress Chloe had worn, the name of our high school subtly referenced in one of the anecdotes, even a few grainy screenshots of old family Facebook posts that had been scrubbed clean, but not before someone had archived them. The anonymity I'd asked for was slipping, and I realized then that I was standing on the edge of something bigger than I'd planned. It had started as an act of reclamation, a quiet revenge to expose the years I had spent swallowed by someone else's shadow, but now it felt like I was holding a stick of dynamite with the fuse already lit. Still, I didn't regret it, not for a second. I had spent so long being the one who looked away, who kept the peace, who let others speak louder, shine brighter, steal more space. And I wasn't going back, not now. I didn't hear from Chloe directly, but mutual friends started reaching out. One of them, Rachel, who I hadn't spoken to in almost a year, sent me a voice memo instead of a text. In it, she sounded breathless, almost panicked, like she was trying to choose her words carefully while also letting me know she knew. "Emma," she said, "I don't know if you're okay or what you're doing, but Chloe's freaking out, like full-on meltdown. She thinks everyone's gonna find out, like really find out. She said something about legal stuff, like suing someone. You should be careful." That part made me pause. Legal stuff for what? Chloe wasn't even mentioned by name in the piece, and neither was anyone else. But it wasn't about names. It was about shame. My sister had lived her entire life being applauded, validated, photographed, and praised. And the moment that golden sheen cracked, she started panicking, not because someone had lied, but because someone had finally told the truth. By noon, I got a call from Hannah. Her voice didn't sound like it had during our last meeting. Gone was the cool, composed reporter who had taken down every detail with surgical precision. Now she sounded rattled, like someone had just knocked on her door with a warning and a smile. She told me someone had reached out to the site directly, an anonymous tipster, asking who the source behind the invisible daughter was. They claimed to know the family involved and wanted to make sure the journalist wasn't being manipulated by a bitter sibling with a grudge. Hannah didn't buy it, but it was clear the message had been sent with intent. Someone was probing, someone was trying to pull the curtain back. She asked me again if I wanted to go public, not hidden behind metaphors or pseudonyms, but by name, with my face, my voice, my proof. At first I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt surreal to even consider it. Then I told her no, not yet. The timing wasn't right. I needed one more thing, something bigger than a letter, something no one could deny or spin, and I had a feeling it was out there. I just hadn't dug deep enough yet. That night, I went back to my parents' house, not to see them, not to talk, just to look. They weren't home, probably holed up somewhere trying to figure out how to put out the fire they'd spent decades pretending didn't exist. I still had a key. They didn't know I still had it, and I didn't feel guilty using it. I moved through the rooms quietly, like a ghost. Everything was the same. The photos on the walls still perfectly arranged to highlight Chloe's childhood glow-up. Her 8th birthday party, her prom night, her first runway show. All frozen moments, framed like holy relics. as if the rest of us had simply existed in the background to admire her from a respectful distance. But then in the hallway closet, behind old linens and an ugly Christmas wreath, I found a locked box, wooden, heavy, with a tarnished brass latch that hadn't been touched in years. I didn't bother with finesse. I took it to the garage, found a hammer, and cracked it open. Inside, I found something that didn't make me angry, it made me cold. There were letters, more of them, not just from Grandpa Joe, but from Patrick, Chloe's real father, letters he had written to my mother after he supposedly left town. Love letters, apologies, plans to reunite. Some dated after Chloe had already turned 10. He hadn't disappeared. He hadn't died like they'd said. He'd been trying to come back, trying to claim something, someone. One of the letters was addressed to my dad. It was unopened. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. To Michael, he deserves to know, but clearly no one had ever delivered it. I stood there, holding a letter that should have changed everything years ago, and realized this had never been just about favoritism, or one golden child getting more than the other. It was about a secret that had gone so deep for so long that it had started to rot the bones of our family from the inside out. Every smile, every family dinner, every forced holiday photo had been taken under the weight of this deception, and I had been the only one kept in the dark because I was the only one not built into the lie. I took the box and left. I didn't lock the door behind me. The next day I called Hannah and told her I was ready to go on record. She hesitated, asked me if I was sure, reminded me that once the story was out there with my name, there'd be no going back. I told her I wasn't interested in going back. We met in her office again, and this time she recorded the whole interview on video. I sat under a single spotlight, no makeup, no prep, no script. Just me, the truth, and all the weight it carried. When she asked me why I was doing this, I said the thing I'd never said out loud before. I grew up believing I didn't matter because no one clapped when I crossed the stage, because my name never got printed in the family newsletter, because I was taught, in 1,000 little ways, that quiet girls who don't demand attention don't deserve it. But I'm done being quiet, and I want everyone to know what happens when the invisible daughter decides to speak. The interview was scheduled to drop the next week, and I knew without a doubt that nothing in our family would ever be the same again. The video went live on a Thursday morning at exactly 10 o'clock, scheduled with the kind of quiet precision that felt almost ceremonial. No dramatic countdowns, no sneak peeks, no overproduced teasers, just my face, washed in soft light, looking directly into the lens with that strange calm that only comes when your nerves have completely burned out and what remains is something colder, heavier, and far more dangerous than fear. I watched it once, all the way through, alone in my apartment, sitting cross-legged on the floor with my laptop perched on the edge of the coffee table and my hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm before the first question even ended. I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. I just sat there, listening to my own voice tell a story that had lived in my skin for years. Like a parasite I didn't even know was feeding off me until I finally ripped it out, root and all, for the worlds to see. By noon, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages from old classmates, coworkers, friends I hadn't heard from in years, even a few strangers who'd somehow tracked me down to say things like, "I saw the interview, you were brave," or, "That was my story too." It should have felt validating, like I'd finally claimed something, taken up space that had never been offered to me. And in some ways, it did. But what surprised me was the silence from the people who mattered most, or used to matter. My father didn't call. My mother didn't show up this time. Chloe didn't even send one of her classic dramatic texts, the kind with 20 exclamation marks and a guilt trip dressed up as an apology. The Green family had gone quiet, and it was the kind of quiet that wasn't about peace. It was about calculation. That night, around 11, as the street outside hummed with the low murmur of cars, and a summer breeze pushed against the glass of my windows, there was a knock at the door. A slow, deliberate knock. Not frantic, not timid, just firm. I opened it, expecting maybe a reporter or a nosy neighbor, but instead, I found my mother standing on the threshold with her shoulders hunched and her eyes bloodshot, like she hadn't slept in days. Her blouse was wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a bun that looked more like a last-minute decision than any kind of style, and her hands were shaking even though she kept trying to hide them in her sleeves. I wasn't going to come, she said without any greeting, without even stepping inside. But something's happened, and you need to know. I didn't answer. I didn't invite her in. I just leaned against the doorframe and waited. She glanced around as if checking to make sure no one was listening, and then whispered something so quietly I almost didn't catch it the first time. He's alive. For a second, I didn't understand. I thought she meant my grandfather, maybe, or some other old family member dragged into this mess. But then she said it again, louder this time. Patrick, Chloe's father, he's alive, he's back. I felt something shift behind my ribs. Not quite fear, not quite anger. Something heavier, darker, like a door inside me had been opened without warning. I stared at her, trying to process what that meant. All these years, they'd told me he was dead, that he'd moved away and died of a heart attack or a car accident, or maybe both, depending on who was telling the story. But it had always been told with that finality that left no room for questions. And now, suddenly, he wasn't a ghost. He was real. And apparently he was watching. My mother stepped closer, her voice trembling now, not with sadness but with a kind of desperation I hadn't seen from her before. He saw the interview. Someone sent it to him. I don't know how. I don't even know where he's been all these years. But he reached out. And he's angry, not just about Chloe, about the whole thing, about the letter your grandfather wrote, about you. I blinked. About me? She nodded. You were never supposed to know. That was the deal. We kept you out of it because you were the only clean one in this mess. The only part of the family not infected by the lie. And now he wants to meet you. That sentence felt like it split the air in half. He wanted to meet me, this man, this stranger, this ghost, who had once been a best friend to my father, and then a lover to my mother, and then a shadow cast over our entire family. This man wanted to look me in the eye. I should have slammed the door. I should have told her to leave, to take her mess and her ghosts and her whispered confessions and go back to whatever version of the story she'd convinced herself was noble. But I didn't. I stood there silent, as she pulled a small package from her bag and placed it gently at my feet. He left this, for you, she said, then turned and walked away, her heels clicking softly against the pavement as if this had been just another errand. I waited until she was gone, until the street was empty and the air still, before I bent down and picked up the box. It was small, plain, no note, no markings, no weight that gave away its contents. I took it inside, sat on the floor, and opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, on my graduation day, walking across the stage, head held high, robes swaying, the fake diploma in my hands. But it wasn't a photo taken by the school or a fellow student. This was different. It was darker, grainier, taken from a distance, behind a pillar, like whoever held the camera had been hiding, watching. On the back, scrawled in neat, unfamiliar handwriting, were 5 words. I never stopped watching you. I didn't move for a long time, just sat there, staring at that photo, feeling the weight of all the years I had believed I was invisible. I thought the worst pain came from being forgotten, from being overlooked by the people you trusted most. But now I understood something even more terrifying. Someone had been watching me all along, not seeing me, not loving me, just watching, and as the silence in my apartment grew heavier, pressing in from all sides, I realized the story I thought I had finally finished was only the first chapter. Because some truths don't set you free, they just change the cage.